This is just amazing, and I just noted that every great community conversation starts with food, and so they made this possible. I'm Carrie Wilson. I'm the CEO of Cornerstones, a nonprofit working here in Fairfax County, and am a member of the Fairfax County Complete Count Committee, and we're so pleased to welcome everybody here. It's an incredible response. You've seen in the setup that our plan is to have given you some time to connect with people at the table. We're building an asset map of all these wonderful folks who are here today, and our hope is that we're going to leave today having posed and hopefully answered some of the toughest questions that empower each of us to go out and take next steps. We are, again, so fortunate this morning. We're going to have a wonderful panel. But first, before we start that part of the presentation, want to introduce two folks who are going to kick us off. Saif Rahman is going to speak in a minute to welcome you from the mosque here, and he will tell you a little bit. He's an active member of our committee. But first, just to welcome and really thank Supervisor Jeff McKay, who's been representing the Lee District, and he's a county kid. He's grown up here. But he is not only the co-chair of the Fairfax County Complete Count Committee, but chairs the budget and legislative committees and many other regional task force, and we know firsthand he understands how important this count is and has been a great supporter for this movement. So we'll turn it over to Supervisor McKay.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. First, let me congratulate all of you for being here. This is an absolutely vital thing that we're in the process of doing here in Fairfax County with the Complete Count Committee. And before I go into details about that, I don't feel like we gave a loud enough round of applause to our host. So let's do that as loud as we can. I really couldn't think of a better venue to have this discussion than here, where so many of us have come for inspiration, for unity, to bring our community together, to recognize that Fairfax County's strength is its diversity of its population. And every time I enter this building, it's nothing but smiles, welcoming, and warm hearts of people who make major contributions to our community's success. And so what a great opportunity today to host you here in particular and to share some fellowship. On a serious note, the census, as you all know, is a once-in-a-decade opportunity. We don't get this opportunity very often, and it is absolutely vital in Fairfax County in particular, because statistics show that the undercounted population is largely our immigrant population, our young children, our undocumented population, people who, for, let's face it, very good reasons, don't want to interact with government right now. And they look at the complete count as a government operation. And so we have huge hurdles this year to convince our population that despite our national mood across the river, that people participating in this will be protected, that they are not at risk, that in fact it's very, very vital that we count every single person in Fairfax County, and it's vital to their future. I mentioned the young children who are undercounted. The census, of course, determines many things, not the least of which is federal funding for Fairfax County, of which that population in particular benefits from. And so we need to do this for them. They need to do it for us. We know that for every uncounted person, we lose $2,000. I mean, this statistic is for every resident in Fairfax County who's not counted in the census, the county loses $2,000 a year in federal programming. Think about how that adds up over 10 years for each person that's not counted. And so there's extreme financial consequences of not doing complete count. The second thing is our representatives. Think of our representatives in Congress in particular, and I want to thank, I know I see representatives here from Congressman Byer's office, Congressman Connolly's office, maybe more. Are there other representatives here, federal level? Congressman Byer and Congressman Connolly's office have been out at a lot of events like this promoting the importance of this for getting federal dollars, but also for federal representation. The complete count determines how many congressional seats we get, how we get represented at levels of government. So it's an important democratic process that we need to engage in. But I think probably the most important takeaway today is that no matter how many times I tell people the importance about the census as a government official, we know that people in this community listen to people at various levels where they're comfortable. And so our faith leaders, our civic leaders, our community-based nonprofits that provide service delivery for the vulnerable in our population, they are the trusted conveyors of information. You are them. So I can't do this alone. County government can't do it alone. We've invested resources in spreading the message. The Commonwealth of Virginia has invested resources in spreading the message. But you are our most valuable messengers because you have a direct connection with the people you serve, people you worship with, people who live in your community. You are the trusted ones that we need to help make sure that communities of interest that are historically undercounted are counted this year. And that's really what we need from you. And we don't have a lot of time. We know that, April 1st, 2020 feels like it's a long time from now, is literally right around the corner. And so we need to be engaging now and getting people to fill out their forms and make sure that we count every person in Fairfax County. Every person in Fairfax County matters and should be counted. And so help us with that. Are you up to that? All right, very good. Thank you for having me for a few moments. Look forward to continuing to engage with you. If you have not checked out the county's website yet, I've given a specific note to add your name to our census partnership list. If you go to the county website, you can do that. It's important that you do that because people will go to that website and look at who our community partners are. And again, we need people to feel comfortable filling out their census form and seeing things like a list of all the trusted organizations in our community that are our partners will help make sure that people feel like filling out a census form is something that they can do. And so please take that step, do that, and engage with the county as we move forward. And if at any point in time you think we're missing something, don't be shy about sharing that with us. We want your feedback. We don't know all the answers to reaching all the most vulnerable in our community, but we will do everything we can to assist you in making sure that that happens. So thank you for having me for a few moments, but most importantly, thank you for your engagement in this activity. Once in a 10-year opportunity, absolutely critical that we get it right. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Saif Rahman. I'm the Director of Public and Government Affairs here at Al-Hijrah Islamic Center. I wanted to welcome everybody here to the Islamic Center. We are one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Islamic center in Northern Virginia. And where you're sitting right now is where we actually have services on our Fridays. So this is a multi-purpose hall. But what I wanted to say as a member of the Complete Count Committee in Fairfax County, we are actually very close to, or if not in, one of the census tracts that was one of the least counted census tracts in Virginia. So I thought it was very appropriate to actually host this meeting so that we could talk about the importance of the census and making sure that everyone is counted. Just a couple of quick notes for you all. We are at around 1 o'clock or 1:01, we will hear a call to prayer. That will be the call to the afternoon prayer, and it will be about 5 minutes or so. And also for restrooms, I know this has been a challenge for particularly our sisters. So the mosque is essentially split into a men and women's side, and our women's restrooms are on that side of the mosque, and there are signs, but there are also restrooms right through that door to the right and in the office over there. So feel free to do that, and the men's restrooms are towards the back. Welcome. Please don't let this be the last time you come to the center. After the event is over, we're happy to show people around who are interested to see the center. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. again. And now as we begin the program, we're going to just invite, we are so honored to have an incredible panelist and really being anchored by Alban Zamora, who many of you know from Telemundo News 44. So we are so grateful that you're spending the time here and to help get out the word, which is what this is about. And so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. You're not on.
What about now? Well, I deal with this every day in TV, so it's okay, don't worry. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you to all of you for being here. This is such an amazing opportunity, this community dialogue. And being in the news, I can tell you how every day we interview people in our community, our neighbors, who are really afraid of participating in the census. There are so many doubts out there. So many people are afraid, I can tell you that. And that's why we're here today, to dispel some of these doubts and myth and help them understand why this is really important. We already heard the consequences. There's money at stake, there's representation as well. So we just want to help them understand exactly what we're dealing with. So let's start with Ali Ahmad. He's Associate Director of Communications of the U.S. Census Bureau. So with that being said, the U.S. Census Bureau is bound by law to protect residents' answers and keep them strictly confidential. The law ensures private information is never published and answers cannot be used against you by any government agency or court. But there are still many questions out there about how confidential it is. So what do you want us to know in that matter?
So thank you, everybody. I think the most important thing to know is that it is completely confidential. Data comes into the Census Bureau. It only comes back out as these publicly released statistics that help drive all of these important policy discussions. Can't be shared with any other agency, can't be shared with law enforcement, a court can't enjoin. But beyond that, I think it's important to know that it's not just government compliance with the law to the people of the Census Bureau, it's something that's woven into the culture. The Title 13 confidentiality protections are above and beyond even what would be the strictest compliance with Title 13 law. We actually deploy the latest and best methods to make sure that even the published statistics aren't able to be used against people. And we don't have time to get into that highly technical discussion here, but especially for the communities that need that, we have resources available and we can help follow up with some much more specifics on how we're on the leading edge ahead of Apple, ahead of Google, ahead of all these other folks that need to be concerned about privacy. We're the gold standard, we're the world leader.
But indeed, there will be something new next year because it will be the first time residents are encouraged to complete the census online. So walk us through the timeline for residents receiving information. What kind of questions will be asked?
So there's a wonderful timeline with all of the specific dates for mailings that the organizers of this event put into the packets that everyone got. But basically, in mid-March of next year, every household in America will be invited to respond to the census. They'll be able to respond online, over the phone, or through the mail. About 20% of all houses that come from areas that have very low internet connectivity will get a paper form in the first mailing. Everybody will get a paper form by the fourth mailing if they do not respond otherwise. What does that first mailing basically look like for everybody who receives it? They are invited to go online or call in one of the 13 languages, including English, that are supported, 14 languages over the phone because we have separate lines for Mandarin and Cantonese. So you will be able to see that. If you don't like using the internet, you can just go ahead and call, talk to a live person, ask a question, but when that person calls, the person taking the phone is able to take the census, will actually prompt people to say, hey, why don't you just fill out the census right now with me on the phone? So we think that actually it's not so much a digital divide, it's a digital opportunity. Digital provides a lot of opportunities for those of you who are out there for encouraging people to fill out the census to say, you can do it right now. That's a major innovation over 2010 when if you were encouraging somebody to fill out the census at the mosque, at the church, at temple, any other place, you would have to say, go home, find your form, mail it back. Now you can encourage somebody to do it right then and there. As far as the questions go, the questions are not overly complex. They're basic questions about everyone's household. This group doesn't need the Census 101, but the basic questions are, a number of people who live in your household, owner or renter, the sex and age of everybody of the household, the relationship status of everybody in the household, and the race, and then Hispanic or Latino status of everybody in the household.
And what about if you need another language, whether print or online, would you have several options?
So in print, we have about, using data from our other more granular survey called the American Community Survey, we have a very good picture of where bilingual households are in Spanish. And so we will send bilingual forms to households, basically to areas where there's a percentage, about 20% or more, of folks where there is one person in the household who predominantly speaks Spanish. So we're going with casting a very wide net to make sure we're capturing any Spanish-speaking households. For other languages, the main support for the core languages is to be able to fill it out online or conduct it over the phone in those languages. For about 59 other languages spoken in this country, we'll have a simple language assistance guide, which will help translate some of the basic questions on the census. The census is not something that you need a high reading level to understand. It's basic questions about the household, but we still want to provide as much support as we can for folks who have limited English proficiency.
So you already addressed that the questions will be easy to understand, but what will be the plan for those that might not be able to read or write? For example, in the Hispanic community, we know that more than 3,000 people in our region are not able to read or write. Is there a plan for them?
So when people fill out the census, it's really done on a household basis. So in a lot of households, and this is something we're looking at in our own communications campaign and our own partnership effort at the national and local level, is how do you reach what's called Generation 1.5, which is they may have come to this country as a child, but they've been raised here, and often it's that Generation 1.5 or the second generation that helps parents engage with government agencies and government forums and stuff like that. But again, if you have reading or writing difficulties, whether they're English related or just related to other things, that phone option is going to be a great way to get on the phone with somebody and have them walk you through it.
You already mentioned something about Google, but we want to make sure that we understand. Should people be concerned about data security at this point?
So it's completely understandable that people would be concerned about cybersecurity. We take the cybersecurity protection as seriously as we do the basic fundamental privacy and Title 13 protections. Whether you're using our online self-response portal or somebody comes to your door in May and takes your census with a device, the data is encrypted as soon as it's brought in. It's encrypted again in transit. It's never stored locally on devices for very long. And it is encrypted again when it's stored permanently for the Census Bureau's ultimate use.
Great to know, but we already know what kind of questions will be there, but what types of questions will never be asked? That's extremely important, I think.
So I think the core ones that we all need to always remember: the Census Bureau does not ask for your Social Security number. The Census Bureau will never ask for money. The Census Bureau will never ask for anything on behalf of a political party. And the Census Bureau will never ask for bank or credit information. When it comes to people being concerned about maybe they see somebody talking about the census or any sort of rumor, we have set up a new rumor clearinghouse page. So on 2020census.gov, you can go to our rumor page where you will see refutations of rumors that are out there. These are things we don't necessarily want to promote, so we don't put a big blast email out saying, we've discovered a new rumor. We post something there so we can point people back to it. And just write this down, rumors@census.gov, send in an email when you see something. When your uncle shares something on the social media and it says something about how census takers are doing this or that, and you think, that doesn't sound right, that sounds wrong, that's definitely not what I learned from the Fairfax Complete Count Committee, you can screenshot it, forward it right to us, and we will analyze it and figure it out. We actually just went through this with one, and we actually were able to contact some well-meaning people who accidentally spread the rumor while trying to put it down and said, you're actually spreading the rumor. Here, you can use this page in order to do it. It was a local police department, definitely not the Fairfax County Police Department.
Well, let's say that I'm a community partner and I want to help people with this effort. What kind of assistance can I give, and what am I not allowed to do?
So there is a great page included in this packet that we put together. It's a 2-pager basic guidelines. We do have some more granular guidelines coming out, particularly for those organizations and those communities that are putting, more money behind their outreach effort. Bottom line, we are so grateful for everything anybody, partner, supporter can do to promote self-response on the census, to convey accurate information that helps make sure we count everybody once, only once, and in the right place. What you can't do is things that conduct the census, and part of that is because of how sacrosanct those Title 13 protections are. So, I like to use this example because very early on we did talk to a state government who said, so we might think about using some of our employees or to help follow up in communities, and because the census is online now, could they have a device with them, and if someone says I haven't filled it out, they can do that. Those census workers that'll go door to door next spring to capture people who haven't self-responded, they do not share anything they might see in the house. A lot of county employees, a lot of other people are just mandatory reporters. They might have the obligation to say, I think there are too many people in that house. The census doesn't do that. We often focus when it comes to privacy. We talk about ICE, we talk about FBI, we talk about that side of law enforcement. But it's code enforcement, it's housing enforcement. The Census Bureau doesn't tell anybody's landlord how many people live in a house, because we just want the number, and we don't care about the other uses people have for needing to know how many people are in a home.
Well, when we say that it can be completely done online, could a census worker come to my door and knock on my door? Can I expect that?
Not only can you inspect it, you should, if you do not fill out the census or nobody in your household fills out the census. So just to be very clear, starting in mid-March, self-response period will open. You'll be able to start filling it out. You'll actually always be able to fill out the census online or over the phone during the entire enumeration period. A bit of a difference from 2010 when at a certain point in time they still accepted the mail, but they stopped opening it and counting it when it was coming in. But starting end of April, mid-May, when people start hitting the streets, we're going to follow up with everybody who did not self-respond. So often when we talk about, the low count areas, what we make available online is a tool called ROAM, Response Outreach Area Mapper. It's a tool that all of you can use to figure out where you can go and what areas really need help increasing self-response. But the Census Bureau, its solemn mission is to count everybody. So we get out there with a workforce that in 2020 we expect to be approximately 500,000 people to go door to door and hit every single community and make sure that we get every household counted.
To avoid any kind of scam, what kind of ID should they have?
So they will have a Census Bureau ID on them. It'll be a federal government ID. They'll also have materials that if someone says, I don't trust you, it's okay, I'm leaving this with you, you can call this number and you can follow up. One thing important for all of you partners to know, we actually have some videos up now related to our address canvassing operation. That's what we're doing now. There's people going door to door with laptops and canvas bags like mine here, which what they're doing now is not counting households, but we're confirming certain addresses because the census starts with having the most accurate address list possible. So we'll have a lot of videos and materials that we will make available so you can show that to communities. And there's also going to be ads up on the air reminding people that census takers are going door to door. But that is one of our biggest concerns, which is to make sure that it's crystal clear who's a census worker and who's not, so people feel comfortable opening their doors and avoid any sort of scam or fraud related to that period.
And we understand that many people will be needed for this huge effort. So I understand you are looking to hire temporary workers during this effort. Are there specific requirements?
So right now, if you go on 2020census.gov/jobs, you can create an application profile and you can see the job requirements. You have to be 18 years of age or older, and you have to be a U.S. citizen. This has come up from partner questions before, so I'll go ahead and just address it. In the prior census and in previous censuses, a small number of workers who are legally permitted to work in this country but are not U.S. citizens have been hired for language needs. So that is something that is an authority available under existing law, and that is something that the census will consider availing itself as that need arises. In 2010, it was less than 4,000 individuals out of the several hundred thousand hired. So it's not an overall very large percentage, but it's one of the things about the census is it's this national civic enterprise that's not even just a single government program. It's an enormous effort, but it's conducted at the most local level possible. So we really do what we need to do to get into the smallest communities and figure out what it takes to get them enumerated.
Ali, thank you for this valuable information. Now I have a question for John Cano, community organizer from Centerville Immigration Forum. John, we're hearing concerns from the community about how responses could be used or those that are too afraid to answer the census questions or would be afraid to answer their door, as we were speaking earlier. But what are you hearing at the grassroots level in this matter?
Sí, gracias, Alba, por esa pregunta. Buenas tardes a todos por venir aquí, estar presentes sobre el Census 2020. Lo que estamos escuchando en la comunidad es algo mezclado. Tenemos miembros en nuestra comunidad que han estado presentes en 2010 y saben cómo ha funcionado el Census. Pero hoy en día, con lo que está sucediendo al nivel federal, es algo diferente. Teníamos esa duda que la pregunta de ciudadanía tal vez se podía preguntar. Ahora ya sabemos que esa pregunta no se va a hacer, pero el daño ya se hizo. Nuestra comunidad tiene miedo, no saben, varias organizaciones como lo que yo trabajo, nos decimos a nuestra comunidad, no abran la puerta a personas que no conocen, porque sabemos que inmigración tal vez puede llegar. Y ahora con el census, estamos diciendo que van a venir personas a tocar a la puerta. Entonces eso a veces confunde a la comunidad. Entonces eso es lo que está sucediendo en nuestro rol como Complete Count Committee, es trabajar con nuestras organizaciones que trabajan junto con la comunidad y asegurar que usan espacios seguros para que ellos puedan llenar esa aplicación. También no todos los comunidad inmigrante hablan español, específicamente aquellos que vienen de Latinoamérica. Tenemos una comunidad muy grande en esa área que habla idiomas mayas y estamos viendo que no hay lo suficiente apoyo del condado para dar ese tipo de interpretación para nuestra comunidad. So thank you everyone for coming out today. Regarding the Complete Count 2020, we've had community members that have seen the census from 2010. But now what we're seeing is completely different. There was the question of citizenship question, and we all know that no longer is going to be answered, but there's that fear that has been instilled within our community. And community partners that work directly with impacted folks are always getting tips. Don't open the door to folks, especially agencies. It could be ICE. And now we're telling people, well, there's this agency from the federal government that will be coming knocking at your door, asking some questions, and it's important. So now there's this confusion, mistrust. So should we open the door? Should we not open the door? And this is why complete count committees are important in each county to partner with nonprofits who work directly with the community. Those are agencies who are at trust. I know the Census can designate certain areas where the community can come and fill out the application. So that's a great tool that the Census is doing right now. Thank you.
I wanted to address quickly that you mentioned in Spanish, there are certain populations within the Hispanic communities that are not able to speak Spanish because they're indigenous, maybe. So you were saying that there's not enough help for them right now?
Yes, that's correct. Thanks for reminding me. There's several folks here in Northern Virginia who do come from Latin America, but their first language isn't Spanish. It may be a Mayan language. And right now what we're seeing at the several county levels that there isn't enough resources to help and support folks who may not speak Spanish. The folks that we work with directly come from Guatemala. Their first language is Maya Ixil. So right now we're seeing how we can help them to have literature or spoken videos to let them know why the census is important. And in this area, Arlington Falls Church is another community with Maya Mom. So that's where we need to, as community partners, reach out to folks and ensure that we're not only providing resources in Spanish, but in also other indigenous languages.
That will be amazing. Thank you for the insight. Now let's talk to Suk Young Ah, DC Area Director, National Korean American Service and Education Consortium. Thank you for being here. So will you specifically address immigrant rights? What can and can't happen during the census process?
Sure. So hi, Suk-young Oh here. Some of you may better know our organization as Nakasek, Virginia, since our name is very long. I don't ever go around saying the whole thing. I just say Nakasek, Virginia. Okay. So some of this has been covered already about what can and cannot happen during the census process by the first speaker on this panel. So we know that the concern with the census is historically based, right? For example, the census was once used for the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. At the time, the War Powers Act superseded Title 13 confidentiality. Since then, confidentiality protections are now stronger because of that, unfortunately. Presently, there are no laws or any federal agencies or government officials that can supersede the Census Act confidentiality protections. So this includes ICE, and this also includes the president. So what can happen, as you all heard, an enumerator can come to your house to have you fill the census in person. The Census Bureau, what they can do is release anonymous information about demographic groups at a neighborhood level. I don't know about you, but I routinely use data from the American Fact Finder. It's very, very useful. You can get down to a census track. So you can get fairly detailed, but if you've ever used it, you also know that there's never any names attached to it. So those are the things that can happen. What can't happen? The Bureau cannot share the individual information you provide in the census. The Bureau, that's kind of funny. When you say, do you all call it the Bureau or do you say census? Because it sounds like the FBI. Okay, the Census Bureau cannot
We say Census Bureau.
Okay, Census Bureau. Not talking about the FBI. The Census Bureau cannot ask you for your citizenship status. The Census Bureau cannot ask you for your social security number. And the Census Bureau cannot and will not ask for any other, like any financial information. For a couple of us like John here, where we are working in that intersection, right, of civic engagement and immigrant justice work, the census, doing Census 2020 outreach is quite a quandary. I mean, you heard about the very practical thing, right? Like we tell people don't open the doors. Well, I mean, not everyone. We tell folks who are in mixed status families who are concerned about that to not open the doors. What else is also happening, because we get this question a lot about, how do we build trust in this effort, is I'm just going to level with you. It's like this morning, right, the release of a transcript of, so I don't want to get too political here because this is a nonpartisan an event, and the census itself is should be a non-political tool. Unfortunately, it has become politicized because there was this whole debacle about whether or not to include the citizenship question. And so, at times it really, I'm saying this from my heart, which is it gets really frustrating sometimes to get that question, because I'm like, I don't know what to do about what's happening in the White House. Like, we talk about this mistrust in government. We will, obviously, and we can talk about what we are doing to help build trust in that effort. And at the same time, let's just, we have to realize that that we are all facing a real uphill battle. And so I just want to really appreciate everyone who is in this room today, having to face, in some ways, a decade's worth of accumulated frustration and anger about, how government works or has not been working for many people. That's what we are up against in some ways too. So I just really wanted to appreciate everyone who has decided, I'm going to take on this challenge because we know that it is so incredibly important. 10 questions, 10 minutes can affect the next 10 years of your life.
Well, thank you for sharing your experience with us. And now we have a couple of questions for Saif Rahman, Public and Government Affairs of this Islamic Center. So let's start asking you, are there specific concerns you are hearing in your community?
So I think it was pretty prescient that you asked the Bureau versus the Census Bureau, because that's what we're telling folks is don't answer the door unless you have a lawyer present, because for our community, it's a little bit of a different government agency that the community has been dealing with, and that's the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And of course, that concern is when you have federal agents at your door, and obviously it's compounded when you have some of the undocumented members of our community. So you have a double whammy in the sense of both ICE as well as the FBI that the community members have to deal with. Other than that, I think language issues are a big issue, because just at this center we have more than 53 languages spoken. So it's a big concern. It's not everyone speaks Arabic. Arabs are actually a minority in the overall Muslim community in Fairfax County. So the fact of the matter of having so many different languages is another issue. But I think that and I want to actually lift up that we have some of our politicians here, because it's incumbent upon our county folks as well as the federal government folks to reassure those workers and those volunteers and those community partners that the data will be, that they will have our back. And we were mentioning this at some of our meetings, because I give a sermon in this mosque and I tell people that you have to fill out a census. And if that data is used to start targeting communities from certain government agencies, that doesn't necessarily go back to county folks or federal government folks. That undermines our credibility as community leaders. And that's a real concern that I think that we need the support of our county folks as well as the state and the federal folks to focus on. Because we know that the census was used in the past for the Japanese internment. And, I'll be very frank, before this election, there were people talking about Muslim internment because of all of the rhetoric that was happening at a federal level. So I do want to lift up that we have a couple of folks here. I know we had mentioned Kanikagire, Councilman Kanikagire from Alexandria is here. Dalia Palchik, she's current school board member running for Providence. Karen Keys-Gamara from the school board So I want to lift up that some of our county folks are here and aware of that, and obviously Supervisor McKay. But I think that we really need to focus on how we can support community partners to making sure that we've got legal resources in place that can support community partners as well as the community should things go the wrong way.
And part of this support, I guess, comes from this kind of community dialogue. So tell us, how do events like this and other partnerships help you dispel these kind of concerns?
Well, it makes our community understand. This community has actually grown significantly over the last 2 decades. Our voter turnout rate in this community of eligible voters is about 78% according to our surveying. We're trying to increase that actually up to 85%. And it's part of engagement and civic understanding. But again, we tried to do a survey here just recently, and we asked a citizenship question on our survey, and that immediately stopped people. So it's a matter of educating people that, look, yes, the federal government, there's some rhetoric that's coming out of the federal government that might not be good rhetoric, but this actually has impact on your resources. This impacts Justice High School. This impacts Bailey's. This impacts, the health and the services that happen. And that's how we're trying to educate to show that this is something that's important.
Well, thank you, Say, for this information. And as you have all seen at this point, we have a virtual guest. We have another panelist with us. She's not in the table, but she's up there. Her name is Lauren Snellings. She's a research director of Voices for Virginia's Children. So I would like to ask you, Lauren, we know that in the 2010 census there were undercounted populations. Can you describe some of the undercounted populations back then? If you can hear me, give me just 1 second. Let's see if we can fix the audio somehow.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry for all the technical difficulties, and I'm sorry for not being able to physically be there today, but thank you to Katie and the Fairfax County Committee and all of my other Census supporters for allowing me to be able to speak here over the phone to you today, because it's so important that we make sure that we tell all people, including our youngest people, for children. So you may wonder why our research director is here to talk to you about this excellence. We're a concept Voices for Virginia's Children. We help all children in Virginia thrive, especially the most vulnerable. We're the only statewide multi-issue child policy advocacy organization. We're nonprofit, nonpartisan, but we're also really thinking about it with us. Hello?
Yeah, you're back.
So we look at our data to identify what children need and then use that to inform our advocacy efforts. We are the home to the Kids Count Data Center of over 150 indicators of child well-being at the state and local level, most of which is either directly from the census or informed from census results. So we're a little biased in that we want to make sure that all the data that we use to inform our work is accurate, but we also want to make sure that all children in Virginia get the resources they need, which may not happen if they have counted. So results from the census impact children in a multitude of ways. It determines how crowded our schools are, where we locate our resources that children need, like libraries and parks, the amount of money that is needed to fund programs that children use, like special education, WIC, and Head Start. And really, in order to make sure that children get all of these resources that they need to thrive, they need to be able to be counted in the census, which is a challenge because young children, 0 to 4, are the most undercounted group.
Lauren, so we understand efforts are being done, but why is this happening? Why children under the age of 5 are the largest undercounted group?
Yeah, so 2 reasons. It's really fear and confusion. We've heard a lot today about fear from children who were missed in 2010. Their parents often just didn't include them on the census, but their parents filled them out. So confusion, they may not know they were supposed to be included because they were newborn or they lived in a complex household. For example, they have divorced parents and they didn't coordinate between who claims the child. There may be multi-generational families, or even a child living with a caretaker that isn't a parent, like an adult, an aunt, or a grandparent.
we could all hear her, right? Yes. All right. Thank you, Lauren. Right now, we would like the audience, of course, to have their questions ready, but I'll ask one more, and I'll ask each of you to describe one strategy you plan to employ to help with the census efforts. I know some of you have mentioned them already, but if you can quickly repeat or just do a recap of what you are doing in your community. We can start with you. Yes, safe.
So what we're actually doing is we started by surveying our community to get an idea of the different demographics in the community itself. We are going to actually dedicate some of our Friday sermons towards the issue and the importance of civic engagement and the census as part of that civic engagement. So that's part of it. But we're also going to be talking to some of our county and state officials about setting aside legal resources so that it's basically a backstop against any negative use of the data or information that comes from the census.
For Nockasek, Virginia, we've been hitting the doors. So literally over the starting in July this past year. Wait, that makes no sense. July was just a few months ago. Anyways, starting a few months ago through March of next year, we are actually just going door to door in certain neighborhoods that in particular have been identified already as hard to count. And in particular, we are focusing on Asian American communities because our folks can speak in language, a few of the Asian languages. We're also working with folks who are Asian American who are teachers, doctors, faith leaders, business owners, right? To educate them about how they themselves can be trusted messengers about the census. Providing a place for the community to ask questions, to contact us for assistance, and then when the time comes, setting up to be a census assistance application assistance center when the time comes. So, I think altogether these are very concrete things that we can do to help build trust in this effort.
John?
All right, can you all hear me? Awesome. Oh, this is a good mic. Yeah, so at the Centerville Immigration Forum, what we're doing is doing monthly presentations on census, just knowing your right to what you can do or cannot do, especially with folks knocking on your doors. We're partnering with local businesses that are trusted within the community to have flyering, promotions at events. Also, we're reaching out to schools, letting them know to make sure they reach out to their children. I don't know how many of y'all have children, but when children hear something at school, they're always going to nag their parents. Mom, Dad, you got to fill this out, fill this out, fill this out. So it's one good opportunity is to partner up with schools. We're also working with our community leaders who speak a different language to see how we can orally transmit the information on census, because some of the languages may not always be written, but it's oral, so it's a good way to partner with community leaders. And we're also looking at being a designated space so folks within our community can fill out the census as well.
So, and while I would say probably my entire job is to do things and to help organize things that will help, get people to fill out the census, I wanted to follow up on schools because I know we have a couple of school board members here and a lot of folks who are engaged with the schools. We have a nationwide program. It's evergreen. We're always providing this help, but we ramp it up as part of the decennial census, and it's called Statistics in Schools. So we provide free materials. You go right now to 2020census.gov, and you can see, I think, 67 different pieces of material, curriculum that teachers can use, activities books, a census song for preschoolers. So we are putting a ton of material out there for schools so they can help not only educate the kids about STEM, but that stuff goes right home and helps promote the census to their families.
All right, so now we want to hear from you. You have been listening to our panelists, and we would like to know if you have any kind of questions or a comment for them. Yes, there you go. Thank you, Katie.
I had a question about the procedures for citizens or military abroad.
residents abroad or citizens abroad?
So, if you're abroad because you're deployed by the military, or you are a federal employee deployed abroad, you still count at home. We work directly with the agencies and the DoD to account for those folks, and they're counted to where they were deployed from, a base in the case of the DoD.
Good to know. We have a second question.
I have a question regarding the basic definitions of what is to be counted. The fact sheet says you're going to count every person living in the US. So the question is, does it depend on how long that person is going to be here? Supposing he's on a temporary visa, R1, J1, visitor visas, does it matter? Would they be counted?
So not visitors, people who are living in the US. I mean, there is a federal filing with some very explicit rules on how we determine that. I think what we can maybe do as a helpful resource for folks is perhaps if Katie, we could send out sort of a short 6-pager, which helps to break down the smaller things. But bottom line, if you are living in the United States of America, you should be counted on the census. The household, the person filling out the census for your household should count you, and it should be where you are living. Actually, Supervisor McKay brought up April 1st, just to clarify. There we go. Just to clarify what April 1st is, that's a referential date. So you can start filling out the census in March. You can keep filling it out all the way through the time we're conducting the door-to-door enumeration in 2020. But April 1st is the referential date. So where are you generally residing on April 1st? That is where you should be counted.
Could I follow up? I mean, there are some visas which are for a year or 2 years, and they're still considered temporary. There are other visitors who are just here for a couple of weeks or a month or so on that date. I mean, I'm not sure why we would... H-1B visitors, R1 for instance, religious employees in our Gurdwara, they're only here for certain periods of time.
So what we should do is get out through this group, we'll get out the specifics tied to what type of visa and how they should be counted.
I just noticed about this, there's a space for a telephone number on the form, and it doesn't specify what kind of telephone number. Is there any guidance as to what that should be?
So that relates to follow-up for the way we learn and can put out information about what type of undercount there was in the census is because of different quality control issues and the post-enumeration survey. No, I don't believe it's an issue. It's a way they can follow up to get in touch with somebody. But I'm actually going to talk to folks and double check and make sure there aren't any technical reasons why it has to be a landline or cell phone, if that's your question.
Hi, I'm Karen Keys-Gamar with the school board, and this is
Dahlia Palchik with the school board.
And we wanted the community to know that we have worked very hard to make sure our students feel safe in our schools, that we never ask a citizenship question, and we also we fully support this effort, so we both wanted to ask how the schools could support this effort to try to make it more complete. Did you want to add?
Yeah, sure, and as you know, being partners, and we are a place where many of our families, and we have networks, including our family engagement and outreach, and we want to bring something forward to our board, but just wanted recommendations, if there's anything beyond that, of being a place where either the forms are filled out or can be a place to communicate back and forth around the census.
I'll go first, and then I think the rest of the panel has some thoughts on this. First of all, I'm a proud graduate of Fairfax County High School, TJHSCC 2001. Yes, so we absolutely want every public, private, charter, parochial school in the country to partner with the census. Being a place that even just hands out factual information about the census, we have great materials we can provide you. And we talked a little bit about this earlier, what can partners do? So because it's an online census, it's very easy to provide devices that people can use if they have internet access issues at home, or even if they just prefer to be where they could maybe talk to somebody who can answer basic questions. And that would be a wonderful use for schools. So, and again, our Statistics in Schools program is a great way to get materials that not only help the teachers, but also organically will come home and help promote that through to the students' families.
Yeah, going to how we can partner with schools at Centerville Immigration Forum, what we do is we hold back to school nights in our office, and we have greater turnout when we use community space where our community may not be willing or can't go to the school because of lack of transportation. So I encourage using community spaces to have back to school nights where you can expand the efforts on education, not only school, but for this important matter with the census.
You know, we all know how much like teachers and other school staff and personnel are really stretched. Oftentimes it does seem like everyone's always like, oh my God, it's flu season. We got to go to the schools. It's, you know, file your taxes, go to schools, you know. So certainly appreciate this, the offer here. And so, you know, I don't have a very specific thing, but just to share that we do know that parent-teacher liaisons often get lots of different types of questions, and so as much as it makes sense to like just to check in on them, like can they answer certain basic questions about the census, and if they don't, if they can't, and which is fine, then would they know like where else to potentially turn to, whether it's within the school district or outside of it. And some of us are doing that. I mean, the Census Bureau has materials in different languages. Some of us have done some more, like, I guess, geographically specific, language-specific materials as well. So, but we have found in talking to parents that they do, like, they ask parent-teacher liaisons things beyond what's happening in schools, and sometimes they'll even ask like the ESOL teacher and stuff like that.
I just want to say Mount Vernon High School, and it's time for prayer.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة.
That was our afternoon call to prayer, just so everyone knows. And if anyone's interested to learn more after the session, I'm happy to answer questions. We also have Imam Naeem Beg, our Director of Outreach here. But I guess we can continue.
My question, this is loud. I work for an agency that supports individuals with intellectual disability, developmental and mental health, and they live in residential settings, in group homes or so. And so we're talking about households, and their kind of household is different from the typical household. So my question is to try to find out who completes the census for them, because they don't, it's a little different. Is it the provider, the person who owns the group home? And sometimes we have families that live in the same counties, and how do we tell them not to count? Because your child is your child. It doesn't matter where they live. How do we support them so that we don't have a miscount?
So what I want to do is maybe speak more generally about the way people who live in institutional living, which would count everything from military barracks and dormitories to college dormitories to jails and prisons, not knowing the specifics of the property that you're talking about. So it's a different operation than the main census. We communicate, we have an address list, we know where these places are, we communicate directly with those institutions, and they have a parallel process where they can, fill out information for the people living in that institution online. They can have an in-person enumeration done where an enumerator comes out and works with them to get it filled out. So we might want to talk, and I can, connect you with some local folks to get answers about properties you support, but it's called group quarters, and that's how we count people who are living. It's, a question came in before this, actually, which either Lavina or Katie passed along, about college students. And college students living in the dorms are counted by their college where they reside, which on April 1st, which is typically at the dorms. So if that college is in session, then they're living there. That's where they count. You don't count them at home. There are procedures in place where we collect information about where they typically reside. That's not where we put them for purposes of apportionment, but for instance, when it comes to prison populations, particularly within states, states get information about where this person resided before entering prison, and they can make their own determination when it comes to things like redistricting or other state needs, how those things are counted. So group quarters, it's a very interesting operation, not stuff that people promoting the census generally need to know too much about, because the folks that handle this on an institutional level are reached out to by a separate campaign, but we can provide some additional information. 2020census.gov has some information on it right now, but that's really more of our campaign site. But maybe I can get a link to Katie for those that are interested, where you can read into sort of the more detailed operational stuff, and we can just try to get an answer for you on your specific property.
We have another question. Where's the mic?
Oh, hi there. I help run Colmore Clinic, and it's we serve uninsured adults here in the community. And we're a trusted place, like many of the nonprofits around the table here. Could you describe to us the scenarios where we could be helpful in specifics? Like, for example, could we, in our waiting rooms, have staff saying, have you filled out the census? If someone hasn't come to your door yet, would you like to call in? We find that even folks who are registering for our clinic can't complete basic forms about where do you live and all that, mostly to what John has spoken to about the language. So, A, could we engage them, suggest they call the number, get them online, and B, how much support can we give them as they are communicating or interacting with the survey? And I have a tag team question with Stacy next.
So you absolutely can make materials available that might encourage folks. It's a wonderful idea to incorporate into your intake process or as part of the exams a reminder to take the census. I mean, in that March to April timeframe in 2020, the way to help motivate and increase self-response amongst the folks that do not tend to self-respond is to really make sure they're getting a reminder at many different places as possible. If internet access is an issue, you can probably make a device available if you want people to be able to fill it out. When it comes to language barrier issues, we might want to talk more specifically about what are the languages that you need materials in, because if a person is a Spanish speaker, there's a phone line they can call into and speak Portuguese. They can get support that way. Several other languages, and then there's written materials in a total of 59 languages that cover any population above 1,000 in America that is limited English proficiency. So we're capturing a lot, but beyond that, our local partnership specialists have already done some pretty impressive things across the country to try to meet the needs of smaller populations that are significant in a specific area.
Written materials are great, and I applaud all the efforts to do that, but our population reading an information in their own language and then completing the form is not across the board. It's not true for all of our clinic population, but for a significant enough part of our clinic population, reading even in their own language is not possible. And so you had described earlier the call-in or the call-in option. Is it appropriate, inappropriate? I guess I'm going on a limb here. Is it inappropriate for a nonprofit, independent nonprofit, to be encouraging for them to call in?
No, it's not only inappropriate, it's very appropriate. It's wonderful.
Okay.
We were also wondering, with the ability now to file or to complete the form online and by telephone, how are you addressing the possibility for duplication? So we'll be talking about this at a number of programs, and if we have several people in the household coming and they both pull out their phone and complete the form, or if there are multiple people living in a household that are not related, how are you addressing that?
Keeping in mind that it's not exactly new. In 2010, there were forms sent to everyone's house that had, a control ID number on them. That this is that form sent to that house. But there were also forms made generally available in public places. We had deduplication procedures then to determine which form to count. I can't get into the algorithmic secret sauce of it, but we have a plan for that. One of the important things that I don't think we stressed here is when you get that invitation to your household, there's going to be an ID number, and so we expect most people to fill it out from that those multiple mail-outs, use their ID number for their house, but you do not need the ID number. And in fact, like our online ads, we're going to be driving people to fill out the census. You'll see transit ads, you'll see ads on TV. People will be coming to the online instrument, filling it out without their ID, but we are ready for that. We're ready to make sure that we get the best and most accurate count for each household, and the data scientists at the Census Bureau are able to deduplicate and make sure that we're getting the right house, and we're also, preventing fraud and other issues that people are concerned about.
So, as an Islamic center, we also help people fill out county and other forms sometimes. What, if any, are there legal implications for any centers or whatever they may be, organizations that help people fill out these forms? Is there any specific, because on immigration forms, for example, there's a specific thing at the bottom that says, is someone filling this out for you, and that the person filling it out has to put it. So are there any legal implications for the center or the organizations helping people fill them out?
We are going to provide more granular details, trying to get as granular as the lawyers for the Census Bureau will allow in terms of giving instructions so people feel comfortable providing assistance. You should not fill out the census form for anybody who is not in your household. Everyone should fill out a form for their household. That said, there's a lot of type of assistance in terms of answering some basic questions, turning people to the phone line if they have questions that can't be answered by you, making materials available, and making those devices available to help people get to the point of being able to fill it out. So we want to encourage as much assistance as volunteers who want to help out can provide, but it's just important you don't cross the line into conducting the census, asking the person, the questions and filling it out yourself. So it's a fine line, but it's an important one.
So what role do you want the business community to play? And is there already a coordinated effort to outreach to the business community?
So there is one both at the national and at the local level. Really, the business community can play the same role that all partners can. And it's not, it's very basic. It's you have channels and you have constituencies you reach. For the business community, that's customers, but it's also employees. I mean, we're working with retailers, for instance, to make sure that they convey information about why the census is important to their workforces. Retail workforces are often young and mobile. They're renters. They hit a lot of the hard-to-count populations that we are really trying to make sure we get an increased self-response rate on. So the same as any other partner. You reach out to people, you reach people from the barbershop or beauty shop, putting a poster up in their window, to a large local employer doing a couple of email blasts, just in their normal course of conveying information to their employees. That's the type of touch. And partnership is really about, in March and April of 2020, when we're really trying to drive self-response, we want just this massive symphonic chorus of people talking about why the census is important, talking about how to get it done, and that is what we're going to do to move the needle and get more people self-responding to the census, which, as my fellow panelists probably understand, and our research colleague who joined us earlier would, gives better data and is the way to ensure that your household is appropriately counted.
We have one more.
I was wondering what happens to the homeless.
I had the same question. Thank you.
So we have multiple ways of finding homeless populations and ensuring that they're counted. We do it through service-based enumeration. We work with the local government, with local nonprofits to find where the services are administered for homeless populations. But we also go out to encampments and we do our best to enumerate people. That's, I mentioned earlier, one of the most amazing things about the census is everybody participates. It's nationwide, but it really gets done at the local level, not just even local to the folks in this room in Fairfax County. It's really done in a lot of ways, neighborhood by neighborhood, figuring out where people are, making sure they're counted, and making sure they're counted in the right place.
Yes.
My question, I work for the Alexandria Hills Department, and we mostly work with the underserved population in the city of Alexandria. From where I come from is from Ethiopia, and our population around this area speaks Amharic language. I was wondering about looking at the survey questions. If someone refuses to give out their name, but the rest of the demographic data, would it still be valid to be used for the census? My other question following this is, why is the name of the people important if they are willing to give other information? And why didn't we choose to use a coding system so we get more participants and people are not afraid that their name is disclosed? Back in the days, I am a nurse, and back in the days when we work for immunization campaigns, we used to color code people or stamp their hands after they get the shots, and it was very useful method to make sure everybody is counted.
So So nobody's name is disclosed as part of the disclosure of census results, ever. It's fully anonymized, and it, like we mentioned earlier, it goes beyond just anonymized statistical data. We actually go through procedures to make sure that you couldn't reconstruct it if you were looking at a granular level with additional pieces of information about that local population. I will speak to not filling out all of the census in this way. So item non-response, not filling out something on the census is something that's been a part of every prior census. It's sort of a reality of how you conduct such a major nationwide effort. But I will, and the Census Bureau will, and I encourage partners to always encourage people to fill out the entire census, because our research shows that as soon as you start to discourage people from one part of the census, or you say that one part is okay to not fill out, it has a very deleterious effect of discouraging people from responding to the census at all. So, you know, while like I said, and item non-response happens, and there's procedures to make sure that it is appropriately accounted for, we should always be encouraging people to fill out the entire census if we can.
That's it. Well, thank you very much to all of you for your participation. I will ask for a round of applause for our 5 panelists. Ali, Young, Suk-Young, Saif, and also Lauren, who was our virtual guest. We cannot forget about her. Thank you very much, and thank you all of you for participating. Thank you for this space, for the mosque, to giving us the opportunity of being here, of course, once again. And the message I would say here is just to continue empowering our community. That's what they have said to us, and we're doing that as well from the media. So if you need anything from us, we're working, NBC and Telemundo, together in a civic engagement campaign as well, and we want to hear from you. What are your concerns and how we can help you? So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for participating, and have a good rest of the day.
And before we close, may I just also add thanks. Thank you, Mr. Zamora. Thank you for your time, and congratulations to them.
Thank you.
That was really wonderful. I feel like we should ask you, Mr. Ahmad, to teach us the census song that you referenced so that we could all lead here and ready to there you go. But seriously, we really appreciate everybody who came out today, and we did hear, we have all of the representatives of our local supervisor's office, Congress, folks that are here today, the police. I wanted to reference Eileen Ellsworth and her team from the Community Foundation of Northern Virginia, who are leading the regional Count the Region effort. They have done so much to help us with our work here in Fairfax County. And really to everyone here, all of you are the trusted partners, the people that are going to help us ensure that we get this together. Our goal was to share information. Our hope was to really empower you with some information and answer some questions that I know we've all had that we're struggling with as we begin to plan. And I think what's exciting, if you haven't had a chance to fill out a slip to let us know, we really wanted to start to build an asset map, really to think about the kind of connections in this room. And if you're interested, there are some sign-up sheets as well. Fairfax County is wonderful, and they won't ever share your data. You've heard this. They're not going to share the data for all of us that signed on. But if you're interested in staying connected or being connected to people in your region or your community of interest, these signs are around, and the Complete Count Committee will share some information with you. So that is our hope. We have a couple more steps. We hope our next step and the call to action is really take this information today, pledge to get involved. As Supervisor McKay said earlier, please go online, fairfaxcounty.gov, and there's a whole page dedicated to the census, which brings together the wonderful information. I've seen a number of our Census, the Bureau partners who are here in the room, but we've got great information that's been pulled together. So sign up to receive that. There is a flyer on your table. We have both the chair of the Partnership for Healthier Fairfax and staff here today. There's a session on October 24th that is open to all, that's really beginning to think about how is that census information used to help us supporting our community, which is where many of us come and really get it upstream. And then finally, November 7th, Fairfax County is planning a Train the Trainer session. So we have limited slots for that, but this is really critical to take everything we learned today, some of the questions. Tony Castrilli, who's on our committee and is leading the communication efforts as the PIO for Fairfax County Chief Information Officer, is pulling together the trainer session. If you want to sign up, if you have particular interest, if you're willing to help then go out into the communities and train others, please see some of the members of our committee here, and that's going to be the really important next steps for us to go beyond this room and reach others. Lastly, I want to ask all the members of the Fairfax County Complete Count Committee to just stand up, please, and so that you can be seen. Steve, everybody who helped plan this event today. Along with Katie Stropman and Carolyn Rankin, who are our committee staff. They're amazing, and they're really here to answer questions. Any other information, we're here to support you. So thank you all. Thank you again for having us in your wonderful space. This has just been beautiful. Thank you all.